Imagine waking up one summer morning. You step outside your home. The streets are quiet. Merchants are setting up their stalls. Children are playing. Everything feels normal. Then you notice a woman in the middle of the street. She's dancing. At first, no one pays much attention. Maybe she's celebrating. Maybe she's drunk. But hours pass and she never stops. Her breathing becomes heavier. Sweat pours down her face. Her feet begin to bleed, yet somehow she keeps dancing. By the next day, dozens of people have joined her. Within weeks, hundreds are dancing through the streets. Some collapse from exhaustion, others reportedly die where they fall. No music, no celebration, no explanation. More than 500 years later, historians and scientists still can't fully agree on what happened. This is the chilling true story of the dancing plague of 1518. July 1518. The city of Strasbourg was part of the Holy Roman Empire. Today, it's located in northeastern France. To understand what happened there, we first have to understand the people. Life wasn't easy. Disease spread quickly. Food shortages were common. Many families struggled just to survive another winter. Superstition shaped everyday life. People believed saints could bless them or curse them. They feared witches, evil spirits, and divine punishment. Fear wasn't unusual, it was part of daily life. But nothing could prepare them for what was about to happen. Historical records tell us it all began with one woman. Her name was Frau Trophia. On a warm July morning, she walked into the street and started dancing. There were no musicians, no festival, no celebration. Witnesses described strange, repetitive movements that continued for hours. Her husband reportedly begged her to stop. Neighbors tried pulling her away. Nothing worked. She danced until she collapsed from exhaustion. Most people assumed she would recover after resting. But the next morning, she was dancing again. Then the day after that, and the day after that. By the end of the week, something impossible seemed to be happening. Others had started dancing too. Men, women, even older residents. One by one, they joined the strange movement, and none of them seemed able to stop. Imagine living in that town. Every morning, more people are dancing. Not laughing, not smiling, just dancing until they collapse. Families desperately tried to restrain their loved ones. Some tied them to beds, others carried them indoors. Yet many returned to the streets, still dancing. Physicians were called. Priests prayed. City leaders gathered to discuss what they were witnessing. No one had an explanation. Then they made a decision that would become one of the strangest choices in medical history. Instead of stopping the dancing, they encouraged it. The authorities believed the dancers suffered from something they called hot blood. Their solution? Let them dance until the illness left their bodies. So the city hired musicians, built wooden stages, and even paid professional dancers to keep the victims moving. The city leaders believed they had found the answer. According to the physicians of the time, the dancers weren't possessed. They weren't pretending. Their bodies, they believed, were suffering from an excess of what they called hot blood. And there was only one cure: let the illness burn itself out. So instead of stopping the dancers, they did something almost impossible to believe. They built wooden platforms in the town square. They hired musicians. They even brought in professional dancers whose job was to keep the victims moving. Imagine watching that unfold. A city trying to cure exhausted people by forcing them to dance even longer. But the plan didn't work. In fact, many historians believe it made everything worse. The music echoed through the streets, day after day, night after night. More people began joining the strange dance. Some couldn't control their arms. Others stumbled through the streets, their faces twisted with pain. Witnesses described people crying, screaming, begging for help. while their feet kept moving. Imagine your own body becoming your prison. Every muscle burning, your heart racing, your lungs struggling for air. But no matter how desperately you wanted to stop, you simply couldn't. Historical accounts suggest that within weeks, hundreds of people had become caught in the strange frenzy. Exact numbers remain uncertain. Records from the 16th century are incomplete, and historians still debate how many people were affected. Some later accounts even claim that dozens of people were dying each day from exhaustion, heart failure, or stroke. Whether those daily death figures were exaggerated, one thing is clear: people were collapsing, and the city had completely lost control. Soon, the streets of Strasbourg no longer felt like a normal town. They felt cursed. Parents kept their children indoors. Merchants avoided the busiest roads. Church bells rang across the city. Every new dancer raised another terrifying question. Was this contagious? Could simply watching someone dance make you the next victim? No one knew. And when people don't understand something, fear spreads faster than facts. Eventually, city officials realized something. Their treatment wasn't saving lives. It was making the disaster even worse. The music stopped. The wooden stages were dismantled. The professional dancers were dismissed. But if medicine had failed, where could they turn next? In a deeply religious society, there was only one answer left. They believed this wasn't just an illness. It was a curse. The victims were gathered together, loaded onto wagons, and taken away from Strasbourg. Their destination wasn't a hospital. It wasn't a university. It was a small mountain shrine dedicated to Saint Vitus. Many people believed Saint Vitus had the power either to inflict this strange dancing curse or to remove it. There, the victims took part in religious rituals. They prayed. They confessed their sins. They were given special red shoes marked with crosses in the hope that faith would succeed where medicine had failed. Then, something unexpected happened. The dancing slowly began to disappear. One by one, the victims stopped moving. The streets became quiet again. The nightmare that had consumed the city simply faded away. But that created an even bigger mystery. If the cause was medical, why did it suddenly end? If it was psychological, why did so many people experience it together? And if it wasn't either of those, then what exactly happened in Strasbourg during the summer of 1518? More than 5 centuries later, historians, doctors, psychologists, and scientists still debate the answer. Some believe they finally solved the mystery. Others think every explanation falls apart under closer inspection. More than 500 years have passed, and despite everything modern science has achieved, no one can say with complete certainty why the dancing plague happened. There are theories. Some sound convincing, others sound impossible, but every single one leaves behind unanswered questions. So, let's examine the evidence. One of the oldest explanations begins with something almost everyone in Strasbourg ate every day: bread. Some researchers have suggested that the town's grain may have been infected with a fungus called ergot. Ergot can grow on rye, especially in damp conditions. And when consumed, it produces chemicals related to LSD, hallucinations, muscle spasms, confusion, convulsions. At first, it sounds like the perfect explanation. People eat contaminated bread, they lose control, and begin behaving strangely. Mystery solved, except the evidence doesn't quite fit. Modern medical experts point out several problems. Ergot poisoning usually causes intense pain, violent muscle contractions, vomiting, and severe loss of blood flow to the hands and feet. Many victims become too weak to stand. Some can't even walk. Yet the dancers of Strasbourg reportedly continued moving, sometimes for days. Dancing for that long requires enormous physical endurance. That's the opposite of what doctors would expect from severe ergot poisoning. While contaminated grain may explain some unusual symptoms, it doesn't fully explain the dancing itself. To the people living in 1518, the answers seemed obvious. They believed they had angered St. Vitus. According to local beliefs, he could punish sinners with uncontrollable dancing. It sounds strange today, but imagine living in a world without modern medicine, without psychology, without neurology. When something impossible happened, people searched for supernatural answers. That belief explains why the victims were taken on a religious pilgrimage. It explains the prayers, the rituals, the special shoes marked with crosses. But belief alone doesn't explain what physically happened to the dancers. Today, the explanation most historians consider the strongest is something known as mass psychogenic illness, sometimes called mass hysteria. It doesn't mean people are pretending. It doesn't mean they're lying. The symptoms are real. The pain is real. But instead of being caused by a virus, the illness begins in the mind and spreads through fear, expectation, and extreme psychological stress. At first, that sounds impossible, but history tells a different story. There have been documented cases where entire schools, factories, and even villages experienced mysterious illnesses despite doctors finding no physical cause. People fainted. They struggled to breathe. They developed shaking, paralysis, even temporary blindness. Not because they were faking, but because the human brain, under extraordinary stress, can produce extraordinary symptoms. Remember what life was like in 1518. Years of hardship, failed harvests, hunger, disease, religious fear, constant uncertainty. Imagine living every day believing that God might punish your family at any moment. Historians believe Strasbourg may have been the perfect environment for fear itself to become contagious. One frightened mind became 2, then 10, then hundreds. Even the mass hysteria theory leaves one difficult question. How did people continue dancing for hours, days, or even longer without collapsing almost immediately? The surviving records don't provide a clear answer. Some accounts were written years later. Others may have exaggerated details. And some original records have been lost forever. Which means even the strongest theory cannot explain every part of the mystery. So after centuries of investigation, we're left with an unsettling truth. We have evidence, we have theories, but we still don't have certainty. And perhaps that's what makes the dancing plague so unforgettable. More than 100 years have passed, yet the dancing plague of 1518 continues to puzzle historians, psychologists, and medical researchers around the world. Not because they believe it was magic, not because they believe it was a curse, but because it reminds us that the human mind is capable of extraordinary things. Sometimes, things we still don't fully understand. The people of Strasbourg eventually returned to their normal lives. Markets reopened, children filled the streets once again, the music faded, the fear slowly disappeared, but the questions remained. Official records, church documents, medical writings, they all describe an event so unusual that even centuries later, historians continue debating exactly what happened. Every new generation asks the same question: how could something like this be possible? Modern psychology has revealed something remarkable. The brain doesn't simply react to the world around us. Sometimes it changes the way our bodies behave. Stress can raise your heart rate. Fear can make your hands shake. Anxiety can leave you struggling to breathe. These aren't imaginary symptoms. They're real. Which raises an unsettling possibility. If fear can affect one person, what happens when an entire community shares the same fear? That even centuries later, historians continue debating exactly what happened. Every new generation asks the same question: how could something like this be possible? So, what really happened during the summer of 1518? Was it contaminated grain? A rare psychological phenomenon? A combination of stress, belief, and circumstances unlike anything we've seen before? Or is there still an important piece of the puzzle waiting to be discovered? Perhaps we'll never know. The people of Strasbourg lived through war, disease, hunger, and uncertainty. They searched for answers using the knowledge they had. Today, we have modern medicine, advanced neuroscience, powerful technology. Yet even now, strange psychological events continue to surprise researchers. Human behavior is often far more complex than we expect. But maybe the greatest mystery isn't why they danced. It's how little we still understand about the human mind. The most terrifying mysteries aren't always hiding in abandoned houses, dark forests, or forgotten castles. Sometimes they're hiding inside us, waiting for the right moment to remind us that history still has secrets, and some of those secrets may never be fully explained. If this story fascinated you, subscribe,